All right. Um, can can you guys hear me from the transmission?
Let's see.
Hello, hello.
Start. Yeah,
Can
you
you?
can start. Already
Okay,
started, so it might be a minute or so. You can start.
okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Rich Fletcher from MIT, and I'm here to tell you today about some of the work we're doing in India, creating some technologies to diagnose pulmonary disease. And I hope everybody can see my screen, and I hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to go ahead and start. Um, so these are some of my sponsors, the Tata Trust and NIH in the US. There's a picture of my group. Um, the area of focus where our group works is we mostly work in global health, but we also do some projects related to consumer health. Um, and the main areas where we work are, if you look at the different um, parts of the healthcare system, we primarily work in the small clinics like PHCs. And for that, we work in areas that are very, very low resource. So we develop some simple tools for doctors and for A&Ms. And then we also work with the healthcare workers, like the ASHAs, and we create some simple tools that they can carry on their phone as well. So these sort of tools are based around the mobile phone. And we originally started working with very simple phones like this that can just do text messages. This was before a smartphone. And then we later started connecting this to a computer, and that allowed us to send and receive messages on the laptop. And we could create things like maps. And then later, in 2007, when the smartphones were invented and appeared, the first was the iPhone in 2007. Um, and then quickly, very quickly, Android followed, and now Android is the most common phone around the world. And now these phones are now starting to be used by community healthcare workers to do things like enter information on forms. Um, but we're still not really using the full intelligence of the phone. So we started out maybe before 20 years ago just working with paper forms, and then we started entering the data into a web form, and and now we're entering the data onto a form on the phone. However, in some ways, very little has changed because it's still using manual data entry. So what my group is interested in doing is what we call the third generation of mHealth, and we're trying to use the processing power of the phones and all the sensors that are inside the phone. So if you give all these capabilities to a community health worker or a doctor, it it enhances their existing senses. For example, they can see things that they cannot usually see with their eyes. They can hear things that they cannot normally see with with their ears. So it enhances the ability to detect and diagnose symptoms, which can be used for diagnosing diseases. And of course, it allows us to use more advanced processing power and algorithms and things that are used in the area of artificial intelligence. So, how are we applying this for pulmonary disease diagnostics? So, I'm going to now talk to you about some of the tools we're using for diagnosing pulmonary disease. So, as we know, breathing and respiration is very fundamental for human life, and it's in the area of yoga. I am also a friend of the faculty at SVYASA in Jigni, south of Bangalore, and of course, we know in yoga, pranayama is very important. And also, there's a lot of treatment for certain conditions such as asthma using different types of yoga techniques. But to be able to measure our breathing and to characterize if there's a problem with our lungs, we need to have different machines or different tools that we can use. So the different kinds of diseases, which are quite common around the world, um, include things like COPD. So COPD is a combination of bronchitis and emphysema, and it is a one of the leading causes of death. So as you get older, many people get COPD due to various factors. It could be due to smoking, or it could be due, in some cases, air pollution can contribute to that. Another very common disease is asthma. Asthma is also common in children, and that's a leading cause of disability. And then another very large common one is pneumonia. So there's different kinds of pneumonia, but as we know, in children, pneumonia is still the leading cause of death for children under age 5. And of course, we worry about other conditions too, such as tuberculosis. So all of these things, we need to have some tools and some methods to diagnose this. And in India, of course, we have very good hospitals in India and also pulmonologists and chest physicians. However, the common GP doctor is not specifically trained to diagnose pulmonary disease, and of course, there's many other types of medicine that's practiced in India, such as, let's say, Ayurveda or the different types of Ayush. So there's actually a need to have some better tools to help support doctors to diagnose pulmonary diseases. So the classic solution for this is, of course, the stethoscope. Um, the stethoscope is the most widely used tool in the world, and however, the stethoscope does have some problems. It's not only a very old tool, but there is some disagreement about the sounds that the different types of lung sounds. Doctors do not always agree on the name of the sounds, but also this tool is usually not used for recording sounds. So um, so it's a very limited tool, and it actually depends on the doctor's ability to hear, the doctor's hearing acuity, and it's difficult for some doctors to hear all the specific sounds. So um, here's an example of what we how we describe this sort of problem. And when you create a tool, um, sometimes we just think about the cost of the tool, but it's also important to think about what is the skill required for a tool. So, for example, this is one of our doctors, Dr. Kodgule. He worked for 30 years in the army, and he worked in the uh, for 10 years he worked in the remote clinic in the mountains in northern India, and he learned how to diagnose pulmonary disease just using a stethoscope. So he's a very highly skilled doctor, but very few doctors are like him and have that ability. So he is considered an expert, but the question that we have is, how do we help doctors, the common doctors who are maybe younger and do not have experience with a stethoscope? So for example, like a young Ayurvedic doctor, um, how can we support this doctor with the ability to diagnose pulmonary disease? So one thing that we do is we connect the mobile phone to the stethoscope. So we have a very simple design that's basically we put a microphone inside the stethoscope itself, and then with the headphones, this allows the doctor to listen to the lung sounds, but more importantly, the mobile is also recording the sound and analyzing the sound. So this gives the ability, with some algorithm and some programming, it is now possible to give this tool to somebody such as a young GP doctor, and he can have the same ability as a more expert doctor using the stethoscope. So that's an example of how the mobile and the intelligence in the mobile can be used to augment or enhance the abilities of a doctor or another health worker or clinician. I will tell you a little bit more about this mobile solution. First, I wanted to introduce our partners. So we were working with a large research hospital called the CRF, which is a Chest Research Foundation. They were supported by the same trust as the Cipla Pharmaceuticals, but they were a nonprofit. And in this picture is myself with some of my students, and there's Dr. Kudgule, and the director of the lab in the middle is Dr. Salvi, and there's a student and then a technician. So we work with this institute for about 7 years. Unfortunately, they just recently closed, and they moved to a different. They are now a different foundation. However, that only happened recently. So the Chest Research Foundation existed for about 10 years in Pune, or 15 years, sorry. So our solution looks like this. Basically, we have a kit, and the kit is comprised of, there's a mobile stethoscope, there's a peak flow meter, and there's a questionnaire. And so first, as I mentioned before, we have the stethoscope that's connected to the mobile. So the doctor then listens to the different lung sounds, and we also listen to the cough. So we ask the patient to cough, and then we analyze the cough as well. And then we use some algorithms that let us see what is the structure of this sound recording. And from that structure, we can differentiate different types of breathing and different types of coughing. The second tool is this peak flow meter. So the peak flow meter is a very simple tool. So unlike a spirometer, the peak flow meter is much easier to use. You just blow it one time, and then the mobile is used to capture the data or capture the reading from the peak flow meter. And then we also have the questionnaire, and then we take the data from those three items: the peak flow, the lung sounds, and the questionnaire, and we analyze them through an algorithm, and then we give some prediction, some diagnosis. And these are some results from different types of machine learning models that we have used. I will not discuss that in detail, but the main point here is that this algorithm does a pretty good job. We have in the range of, our range of accuracy is in the range from, let's say, 85% to 90%, sort of in that range, which is quite good for a screening tool. And we have a mobile app which controls everything. And this is just some screenshots of our mobile app. And we have a version that's in the Play Store if people want to try it and use it. But after you answer some of these questions, the final screen gives you, it tells you the chance of having each of the different diseases. So, and then you can click on it and find out what is the reason for that specific diagnosis. For example, if it predicts that you might have COPD, it tells you why, and it says because it had a low peak flow meter reading, or the patient is a smoker, etc. Now, I just wanted to talk briefly about the current situation in which we're in, which is the coronavirus. So over the past year, we have been working, as part of this research, we have started working on infectious diseases, and in particular, respiratory infections. So this includes things like pneumonia, tuberculosis, and also, as you know, COVID-19 is a respiratory infection, and specifically, it is a viral infection. So for that, we're using the following tools. We use a specific questionnaire. We're also analyzing the cough again, but we're also added some new tools. So we're using the pulse oximeter, which measures how much oxygen you have, how well your lungs are giving you oxygen. We're also measuring the cough again, and then we're also analyzing the pulse, and that's because you can detect abnormalities in your pulse even before you have a fever. So I will mention a little bit more in the following slides. So so the cough is a very easy data to collect, and we have an algorithm that can determine the difference between a wet cough and a dry cough. And usually the wet coughs are the result of a bacterial pneumonia, and the dry coughs are more common in a viral pneumonia. So we're able to do that classification. And these photos, these plots show some of the processing that we do on the cough sound. first we find the individual cough events, and then we look at each peak and extract some mathematical features. And when we combine this with the other tools in the kits, it helps improve our results. The other tool that we use, which you might have seen in an airport, is a thermal camera. So a thermal camera looks at the heat in your face, and this is used in the airport when you are getting off of the airplane. Usually, the security are looking to see if any passengers on the airplane have a fever, because a fever is a symptom of an infection, right? So we do a similar thing. We use a special camera that it's very small and it's low cost and it connects to a mobile. But we not only look for a fever, but we're looking at the pattern of the temperature in your face. So that gives us much more information, and we're able to diagnose not just respiratory infection, but also other pulmonary diseases as well, just from the temperature distribution of the face. And we have used this in other projects looking at, for example, clinics, so we can detect patients who have circulatory shock or they have sepsis, for example. This is a project we did at Ames Hospital in Delhi. This is from a pediatric ward. And this technique is now being used to diagnose things like pneumonia in children. This technique was developed by Massachusetts General Hospital. So I worked for 3 years with this person. Her name is Dr. Patricia Hibbard. She was a professor at Harvard Medical School. She is now the department head at Boston University of the Global Health Department. But at the time, she was working at Harvard, and I was in her group. And she developed this technique for detecting pneumonia using these thermal images. And these are just some sample pictures. So we started with taking pictures of the torso, but now we're able to do it just using pictures of the face. So you don't need to worry about, exposing your torso. And now just using these facial images, we're able to do processing of the data. The other tool, which is the pulse analysis, I mean, everybody, as most people in this group are very familiar with Nadi Pariksha. And Nadi Pariksha is sort of the traditional ways of analyzing the pulse. But in particular, we're looking at what we call heart rate variability. And when you have a low heart rate variability, it means that there's something wrong in your body, that you have some kind of either psychological or physical stress. And when you have a low heart rate variability, that could be a sign, an early sign of a latent infection. So we have different tools that can measure the pulse and analyze the pulse. So I think that's a quick summary of what we're currently developing for coronavirus, and we have ongoing studies, but we're hoping to publish something very soon and continue collecting data. Um, I wish there was a way to take questions in this forum and make it interactive. But if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Here's my email address, and we also have a Twitter page, and this is also our web page, so you can see the other areas where we also work and other types of diseases. For example, we also work on diabetes and cardiovascular disease and maternal and child health. But I think I'll end there, and I don't know if there's any way to receive questions, but thank you for watching, and I wish everybody a safe time, and hopefully soon things will start to get better, and we'll be able to start interacting more in person. But I wish you all the best, and thank you very much.